have already discussed the factors that led to the Industrial Revolution. But, there is an idea that these changes that came in the industrial system was led by certain developments in the society. And this development came with the age of innovation. So as we know that this industrial revolution, the phase itself is called the age of machines. But what exactly changed and how exactly it changed is something that we need to delve into. Now, you see a very, new age phone right here. But it is interesting to note that this was not always the case, right? There were certain changes that made this possible. And in fact, a telephonic communication system was something that did not exist at a particular age. So who brought that change? Graham Bell established his telephone in 1876. As you can see right here, it is a very different structure. So just had a mouthpiece and a earpiece, and here we could dial the numbers. So Graham Bell was the first one to invent the telephonic communication system in 1876. And not just this invention, there were several other inventions that helped the Industrial Revolution to actually take place. We have seen and we have discussed the fact that textile, industries revolutionized over the time in this period. But how was that possible? The first push was given by Newcomen's engine, which was a steam engine, established by, patented by Thomas Newcomen. And this engine was important because it drained out water from deep mines, thus making it vital for mining industries. Now, this, machine was established, it was invented in 1712 to drain out the waters from the mines. Now, you might have a question as to how did mines suddenly become so vital, right? But we have to understand that mines provided the raw materials that would back these factories that were coming up. So, coal and iron became the backbone to these new industries. And in order to, procure the most amount of coal and iron from the mines had to be made proper, and that was done by Newcomen's steam engine. So we see that mines are the places which, from which metals are being derived to be used in the industries. Now, coal and iron became the backbone to these growing industries. As you can see right here, this is one of the coal mines and iron mines of the industrial age. And here you can see how a girl is inside the coal mine collecting the coal pieces. Now, in order for these, factories that were coming up, in order for them to function, to create goods, what exactly were the modes that the factory system had in order for these goods to be created? And how exactly was that established or achieved? There is a story behind this, so let's delve into it. Now, we have already learned and we have already seen that there were, of course, industries even before the factory system came out. And these industries were called the domestic industries, or as we know, the proto-industries. When concepts of large factories did not, take place or was not established. So this domestic system was known as the putting out system. And as you can see here in the putting out system, every product is handmade, right? Now, why exactly did this putting out system come up anyway? We have discussed the fact that these merchants were becoming wealthy because of the trade routes. They had a capital that they wanted to invest. So, because they could not invest it in the cities, since there existed guilds who specifically created certain products in the cities, the better alternative for these merchants who had money was to invest it in the rural areas. So the best alternative, or the better alternative, that these new entrepreneurs could establish was the putting out system. Now, traders primarily wanted to trade without any restrictions that the trading guild in the city had. So they wanted to establish independent sectors without any restrictions to create products that they could trade with, because the guilds in the city had a strong hold over the trading system, the chain of trading system in the cities. Now, the guild had many restrictions on the price, the quality, and the production that would be happening in the cities, how the product would be transferred, what exactly should be made. Everything was decided by the guild, who were, of course, a kind of a collective of wealthy members who could not be displaced. So the guild was, of course, a very complex system for, a worker or a new merchant to crack down. So the better alternative that they turned to was the countryside, because they started to, think about the aspect of working independently, and the alternative was provided by the countryside. Now, we already know the fact that, these countrysides were the places where people were focused on a livelihood based on agriculture. So, why would they take up these activities, or why would they take up product making that would ultimately go for trade? Because that was not their primary activity. We have to understand that these countrysides were the places that did not have a cash inflow, because they were primarily focused on land and whatever the land would give back. So this opportunity to create products gave them an idea of the cash inflow, the cash at hand that they would receive from these new merchants, new entrepreneurs. Now, they were also able to work to create these products, because after sundown, they were quite idle, and you can't work on fields after sundown. So they had a chunk of time that they could invest. And also we have to remember that the planting system and the harvesting system has mid-seasons in it. So there are, times, there are seasons in the year when the peasant is not really working on field. So this came as a second source of income for them. So we see that the new traders are therefore gaining the idea that they could employ people from the countryside by giving them the raw materials for producing the product that they could directly take and sell in the markets. So you see how there is no middleman like the guild, okay? So nobody else is to be paid. Directly payment should be done to the laborers, and then the products taken by the merchants themselves and sold in the markets where they get paid, right? So here you can see three sort of merchants of that time. So the merchants are carrying goods to the countryside, because all these pictures, as you can see, are of the countryside. So the raw materials were being provided by the merchants themselves. Now, this entire system, this entire putting out system was very tedious. Now, if you can locate what exactly the problem was, then you might see that it is very, very time taking, because the raw material will be brought by the merchant, then the products will be produced by hand, and then again the merchant will carry it back and sell it in the market. So it not only was it time taking, it needed a lot of transportation. There were issues about the products being stolen on the way. So a lot of things were required to speed the process up. So there was a required change that had to be brought. Now this change was brought by somebody called John Kay. John Kay established a structure called the Flying Shuttle, which was a simple weaving machine in Languedoc, France in 1733. And he revolutionized the process of weaving because he made it faster. What exactly did he do? This flying shuttle by John Kay reduced the number of necessary weavers and greatly sped up the process, so one weaver could weave fabric more quickly than two. So primarily what would happen is two weavers would be there and they would keep shifting the shuttle by hand, right? Now, with a stroke of one cord, the shuttle would directly go there, and it was not, a lot of labor was not necessary. Basically, the time to produce that particular product got reduced. The advancement that came to this particular flying shuttle was brought by somebody called James Hargreaves. So what did James Hargreaves establish? It was the spinning jenny. The spinning jenny revolutionized the history of textile production. Why? Because this machine with advancement could spin between 80 to 120 spindles of thread at once. So primarily when it was done by hand, it was one thread creating a yarn, creating a spindle, right? Then came the flying shuttle when, the textile production got a little bit faster. But when spinning jenny came, at once it could spin do 8 times the work. So it could spin 80 spindles at once. It could have 80 spindle holders. Later it became 120. So you see, after 8 times the work, it again sort of got doubled up, right? So it was lesser amount of time, more amount of work. The spinning jenny was brought ahead in Stanhill first in England in 1764 by James Hargreaves. Now, you might have a question as to, what is a thread, what is a spindle, what is a yarn, what is being spun, right? So, for our, understanding, we can differentiate the three. First is, of course, the thread. A thread is, as you can see in the picture, is made with different materials, mostly used in sewing purpose. So, it's a single sort of material that is there, that is a thread. Now, what is a spindle? A spindle is basically this object, okay? It is this object. A spindle is a straight spike, usually made from wood. So, usually it is made of wood, used for spinning, twisting fibers such as wool, flax, hemp, cotton into a yarn. So, a spindle is something that holds the yarn. So, what is a yarn? A yarn is a continuous interlocked thread. So, many threads will make a yarn, and this yarn will be held in a spindle. It was not enough to create, machines that could reduce the time. It was also important to create machines that would require less labor, because the more labor, the more charges would have to be paid. So, now inventors were looking at something that could make the machine automated. Now, how will this become automated? Only when machines will be given power so that they can run by themselves, they can generate products by themselves. That power was produced by James Watt through his revolutionary steam engine. So the steam engine was an early steam engine, of course, that was produced by Watt. And it was the driving force behind the Industrial Revolution, because this particular engine was used not only in factories as power sources, but also in locomotives for transportation of goods. And James Watt kept developing, kept developing the product sporadically between 1763 to 1775 in order to meet with the demands. So the steam engine basically had to garner more power to support much larger machines. The next invention, which was that of water frame by Richard Arkwright, tended to make the entire process of creation of textile mostly automatic. So more than one labor would not necessarily be in fact needed to now create a product. So the water frame that was patented by Richard Arkwright came in England in 1769. The machine was capable of spinning 96 strands of yarns at once and did not require any technical skills to operate. So maybe one labor could itself do it because it was not labor intensive primarily, and secondly, no technical skills was needed. So it was just to see if, just to operate the machine a little and also to see that the machine works properly and all that. Other than that, the spinning process was already automated. Now, the spinning mule was a invention in 1779 by Samuel Crompton that aimed at producing, luxury products in much more number of counts, right? Luxury products like that of muslin. So the production of muslin, that was a luxury product at that point of time and garnered a lot of wealth, was only possible because spinning mule would look at making the production process much more easier. So we see that all these sort of innovations one by one in the textile field is only to give a push to the production. So one after the other, these inventions are better than the last. Edmund Cartwright is someone who entirely sort of displaced a literal labor to handle the machine even. What did Edmund Cartwright do? He invented the power loom. Now the power loom replaced the flying shuttle. So once it replaced the flying shuttle, it replaced the two workers as well. And this power loom could function by itself and of course produce mass goods. And this was established in 1785 in England. So can you tell me the power loom was invented by whom? Was it James Watt, Edmund Cartwright, Richard Arkwright, or John Kay? The correct answer is Edmund Cartwright. Now, you might have a question that, all these scientists that we are talking about, then such revolutionary changes that they brought, such innovations that they made, they might be, very well trained to make these innovations. Otherwise, how was it possible for them to make it? That was absolutely not the case. Because these scientists came from such backgrounds that wasn't even closer to studying of natural sciences. Why? Because the education in basic sciences like physics or chemistry was extremely limited in the late 19th century. Limited in the sense that it was not even really pronounced at that point of time, right? Now, these people that we know, that we have spoken about, were not trained scientists. Most innovations were a product of the determination of the scientists, the interest in creating a product that was necessary, in curiosity to make a new invention, and the luck for that invention to work the way they would want it to work. So that, along with the application of scientific knowledge, the little scientific knowledge that they had, was something that pushed these inventions to happen in the first place. For example, John Kay and James Hargreaves were still, attached to the textile industry. They knew certain things about production of cotton. So they invented in that arena. But they weren't really trained scientists to create machines that were to be used in science or to be used in production. In fact, Richard Arkwright was not even a scientist. He was not even a person who read sciences. He was a wig maker and also a barber. So you can understand that these people were absolutely from different walks of life, right? But what made them focus, what made them create these innovations were all these factors. For example, Samuel Crompton and Edmund Cartwright were also not trained, scientists, because Edmund Cartwright was somebody who had studied literature per se, and he did not, imagine of himself creating such an innovation that would entirely change the scientific technology of production of machines of factories. So there were not only these innovations that of course augmented the process of production, but other innovations that were so very important that they later became a very integral part of the society and the way the society was structured, the way the changes were happening in the society. The first was of course the telegraph by F.B. Morse. So Samuel Morse created the telegraph in 1836, and this telegraph was the first process of communication system even before Graham Bell produced his telephone. Next we have Elias Howie with his sewing machine in 1844. So we have seen that of course, productions are happening in large scale, but sewing machine made it possible for everybody to start producing. So everybody should have one sewing machine in their homes, and the women started sort of making products by hand, because handmade products never really went out of fashion, and handmade products were something that aristocrats wanted. So sewing machine became a very integral part of the industrial picture as well, and I'm sure that sewing machines are still a part of the creation of the handmade products. Then we have Eli Whitney and his cotton engine in 1774. Now, the biggest backing or the biggest sort of push that an innovation could give was that of creating better alternatives and cheap alternatives to be used in in making these factories and industries function. So of course, the production of wrought iron that began in 1784 came as an alternative to the iron that was being taken, and it was easily available and also was cheap to procure, since it became the backbone of the factory system of production, just like iron. Then we have the Bessemer's converter. Now we have looked at the fact that coal, iron were the backbone of the industries, but we also see steel becoming much more important. So how was steel being produced? It was being produced by Bessemer's converter that was invented in 1856 by Henry Bessemer. Here comes a question that all these innovations, all these changes, all these ideas that are popping up, how is it possible that all of them get approved, or how is it possible that all were successful at this point of time? The primary reason was the situation the society was in, and also the policies that had become popular at that point of time. Do you remember about free trade and mercantilism? That is correct. That opened up the ideas of the new entrepreneurs, of the new traders. So what exactly happened is, the policy of free market, of free trade, allowed the spirited entrepreneurs to take their own decisions, to basically think where they would want to invest, what they would want to invest on. And these new entrepreneurs were the ones who brought wealth to themselves as well as the nation, because now they were taking risks to produce what the society actually required. Now, this is also the point of time we see that the government is also, taking up policies, moving forward to create political situations that would back its augmentation process of production as well as industrial revolution. So, East India Company also led the work of empire building by trading with other continents. So, it not only sort of began with, channeling its contacts by colonizing, but now it, was invested in focusing on the colonies that would become markets. And how would that be possible? Only through trade. A healthy competition between Britain and countries such as France, Holland allowed a greater will to work upon improving the industrial and trading sectors. So it was not just Britain who was focused on trading with the colonies, but places like France, Holland that focused on the fact that they needed to compete so that they could gain more wealth out of this entire chain. Now we see that the British progressive policies or the progressive laws made Britain very wealthy at this point of time. The reforms and the policies also led to industrial revolution, traveling out of Europe and also giving them wealth, desired amount of prosperity. Thus, we can see that all these inventions were primarily the change, primarily the sort of ideas that was required to change the structure of the way the society was producing. So these changes, these innovations, ideas, the practical bent of mind of the scientist was basically what produced the age of innovations to take ahead the age of machines into the next world and to build the future, the modern world that we live in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly, learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.